At 8:14 in the morning on August 6th, 1945, a 34-year-old schoolteacher named Fumiko Harada is walking across a bridge over the Ota River in Hiroshima. She is carrying a cloth bag with her lesson notes inside. The sky above her is the clearest blue she has ever seen. There is not a single cloud. She stops for a moment on the bridge and looks at the water below, because the morning light on the river is genuinely beautiful, and she is the kind of person who notices things like that. She is one of 340,000 people going about their morning in Hiroshima. At 8:15, she ceases to exist. Not dies, not falls, ceases to exist. The thermal pulse from the detonation, occurring 1,900 feet directly above her, reaches her body traveling at the speed of light. In the same instant that she might have registered a flash of white in her peripheral vision, her body is gone. What remains on the concrete of the bridge is her shadow, burned permanently into the stone. A dark outline of a woman with a cloth bag, frozen in the last second of her life. That shadow will still be there 50 years later. That is what happened at 8:15 in Hiroshima. Now let us go to Tokyo and watch the people who refuse to believe it. Lieutenant Kenji Hatanaka is 28 years old and is standing in a field outside Tokyo watching teenage boys practice bayonet drills with bamboo poles. Japan has run out of rifles. The recruits in front of him, some of them look 15, maybe 16, are thrusting their bamboo sticks at straw dummies with the concentrated effort of people who have been told that effort is the same as equipment. Hatanaka does not find this tragic. He finds it admirable. He was raised inside a military philosophy that treats the human will as the ultimate weapon. Steel breaks. Machines run out of fuel. The willingness to die does not run out. This is not a slogan to Hatanaka. It is the load-bearing wall of his entire identity. Remove it, and the building collapses. He has never once tested whether the building could stand without it, because the thought of testing it has never entered his mind. His radio operator approaches him with a piece of paper. The message says, "All communications with Hiroshima have been lost. A large explosion has been reported. Details are unknown." Hatanaka reads it, hands it back, and returns his attention to the recruits. Whatever happened in Hiroshima, his answer is already decided. You hold your ground. You do not yield. The only question that matters is how many Americans you kill before you fall. He does not know, standing in that field watching boys with bamboo sticks, that within 9 days he will be standing inside the Imperial Palace with a loaded pistol, screaming at generals twice his age, trying to prevent the Emperor of Japan from surrendering. But that is 9 days away. Right now, he watches the recruits and thinks they will do. In the basement of the Imperial General Headquarters in Tokyo, the communications board for the Chugoku Military District has gone dark. This is not supposed to be possible. The young officer responsible for monitoring that board, a 22-year-old named Corporal Masuda, who has held this post for 7 months without a single significant incident, stares at the silent panel with the particular confusion of someone whose job has always been boring and who has suddenly encountered something that does not fit any category he was trained to recognize. He tries every frequency assigned to Hiroshima: military command, civilian broadcast, police, railway coordination, weather station, air defense network. Every single channel returns the same thing: static. He waits 10 minutes, thinking it may be an equipment fault. He checks his own equipment. Everything is functioning. He tries again. Still nothing. He walks down the corridor to find a senior officer. And something about his face, something in the way he is walking, causes two other officers to stop what they are doing and watch him go. The report reaches General Korochika Anami, Japan's war minister, at 8:47 in the morning. Anami is 58 years old and has the posture and the personal intensity of a man who has never in his life backed away from anything. He listens to the report about the lost communications with the expression of a man being informed about a delayed shipment. His response is almost insultingly calm. Increase contact attempts on all channels. Request that the nearest regional command send an investigation team. That is it. That is the full extent of his alarm. But to understand Anami, to really understand why he reacts this way, and why his reaction is not simple arrogance but something more dangerous, you need to understand what he believes Japan is about to do to the United States Army. Anami has spent the last 8 months building the most elaborate defensive trap in military history. Operation Ketsugo. 2 million frontline soldiers positioned at every possible landing beach on the Japanese home islands. 32 million civilians organized into militia units. Thousands of Oka rocket planes, human-guided missiles with pilots locked inside, waiting in hidden coastal caves. 4,000 kamikaze aircraft ready to launch the moment American ships appear on the horizon. Suicide boats packed with explosives concealed in fishing villages along the coast. The American military has estimated that an invasion of Japan will cost between 250,000 and 1 million American casualties. This number, enormous, almost unimaginable, is the foundation of everything Anami believes. Bleed them badly enough on the beaches, and they will negotiate. They will let Japan keep its emperor. They will leave with a settlement rather than a total occupation. It is not a comfortable strategy. It is a strategy built on the willingness to absorb catastrophic suffering in exchange for an endurable peace. Against that plan, that vast, terrible, carefully constructed plan, one missing city feels like a rounding error. He goes back to his briefing documents. 250 miles away, in a research laboratory north of Tokyo, a 53-year-old physicist named Yoshio Nishina hears the first fragments of the Hiroshima report on a radio and sits completely still for approximately 30 seconds. His assistant will later describe his expression during those 30 seconds as the look of a man who has just realized he is standing at the edge of a cliff he cannot see. Nishina has spent 5 years leading Japan's own atomic weapons research. He understands uranium isotope separation, critical mass thresholds, and fission chain reactions at a level that perhaps 200 people on the entire planet can match. He has personally calculated what an atomic explosion would do to a city. He has written theoretical papers on blast radius, thermal yield, and radiation dispersion that sit in classified files in the War Ministry. Which means that when he hears a single explosion, 1 or 2 aircraft, all communications severed, mushroom-shaped cloud, rising to extraordinary altitude, he does not need more information. He already knows. He picks up his telephone and asks to be connected to the War Ministry. When he finally reaches a senior staff officer, he speaks slowly and precisely. I believe Hiroshima has been destroyed by an American atomic weapon. I am requesting authorization to travel there immediately. The staff officer pauses. Dr. Nishina, with respect, our own assessment is that this was a concentrated conventional attack. The technical requirements for a functional atomic weapon are beyond current American capability. Nishina stares at the wall of his laboratory for a moment. "I understand that assessment," he says. "I was part of the research that produced it. I am asking you to consider that we may have been wrong about American industrial capacity." Another pause. "We will consider your request and respond." He hangs up and begins packing his Geiger counter anyway. Here is what makes Nishina different from every general in that Tokyo bunker. He is capable of being wrong, and he knows it. Scientists build their entire professional lives around the possibility that their current understanding is incomplete. Anami cannot afford that kind of thinking. Hatanaka refuses it on principle. But Nishina, sitting in his laboratory with the most sophisticated understanding of atomic physics in Japan, is already grieving for a city he has not yet seen, because the evidence in front of him points in only one direction, and he is constitutionally incapable of looking away from evidence. What he does not yet know, what no theoretical paper, no calculation, no model has prepared him for, is the specific texture of what an atomic bomb leaves behind. The shadows burned into concrete. The watches stopped at exactly 8:15. The rivers choked with bodies of people who crawled to the water thinking it would help. He has calculated the physics. He has not calculated what the physics looks like on a human face. He will see it tomorrow. By early afternoon, a fragmentary intelligence report has reached the full Supreme War Council. Admiral Soimu Toyota reads it and sets it down with the deliberate composure of a man who has been reading catastrophic reports for 4 years and has trained himself to treat composure as a form of leadership. Almost certainly a concentrated incendiary attack, he says. Possibly a new delivery method. The Americans have been experimenting with combined raids to maximize simultaneous thermal damage. The cloud description is consistent with large-scale fire. He is not stupid. This is the critical thing to understand. Toyota is one of the most experienced naval commanders in the world. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of American air capabilities. He has read every significant damage assessment from every major bombing raid on Japan since 1944. His expertise is real. His analysis is internally coherent. And that expertise is now a prison door, locked from the inside. Because everything Toyota knows about American air power tells him that what happened in Hiroshima, whatever it was, fits into a category he already has a name for. He cannot see outside the categories that his experience has taught him to use. He is, at this moment, the most dangerous kind of wrong person. A wrong person who has excellent reasons for his wrongness. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo pushes back. He argues for a ground investigation before any conclusions are drawn. He argues that the scale of the communications blackout is unlike anything in their experience. Anami agrees to send investigators. But the tone of the room is already decided. A setback. Possibly a significant one. Not a catastrophe. Certainly not a new category of weapon that would require rethinking everything. The meeting ends. Officers return to their stations. The war continues. That night, Tokyo carries on with the particular exhausted routine of a city that has been at war for 4 years and has forgotten what normal feels like. Rations are thin. Blackout curtains are drawn. Families eat in silence around tables that used to have more people sitting at them. no official announcement about Hiroshima has been made. No newspaper carries the story. The radio plays its usual programming. In his barracks, Hatanaka sleeps easily. His conscience is clean because his convictions are total. Men with total convictions sleep well. That is one of their great advantages. In his office, Anami works until midnight, reviewing coastal defense positions, approving supply requisitions, signing orders. He is methodical. He is focused. He is completely certain about what this war requires, and that certainty is the most load-bearing thing in the entire Japanese military structure. The moment it cracks, everything above it falls. And in his laboratory, Nishina sits at his desk in the dark, with his Geiger counter in his lap, running calculations he already knows the answer to, staring at the wall, unable to sleep. Tomorrow he will take the train toward Hiroshima. Tomorrow the train tracks will be twisted into shapes that have no name in any engineering manual. Tomorrow he will walk the last 5 miles into what used to be a city of 340,000 people. And for the first time in his life, the scientist in him will be completely overwhelmed by the human being. But tonight he sits in the dark, and somewhere in the ruins of Hiroshima, burned into the concrete of a bridge over the Ota River, the shadow of a woman with a cloth bag waits in the silence. The train from Tokyo to Hiroshima takes 11 hours under normal conditions. On the morning of August 7th, 1945, Yoshio Nishina boards at Tokyo Station with a leather bag, a Geiger counter, 2 notebooks, and the quiet, internal certainty of a man traveling toward something he cannot fully prepare for. The platform around him is full of the ordinary misery of wartime Japan. Soldiers in transit, women carrying too much luggage, old men standing with the specific stillness of people who have learned to wait without expectation. Nobody on that platform knows what happened in Hiroshima yesterday. The government has still not made an announcement. The newspapers are silent. The official position, to the extent that there is one, is that details are still being assessed. This is technically true. It is also a way of saying, we do not yet understand what we are dealing with, and we are not prepared to admit that in public. Nishina finds his seat, places his bag overhead, and watches Tokyo disappear behind him through the window. He spends the first 2 hours of the journey reviewing his own research notes, not because he needs to. He has had these calculations memorized for years. He does it because focusing on numbers is the only way he knows to manage what he is actually feeling, which is a specific kind of dread that has no name in the scientific literature. In Tokyo, General Anami arrives at the War Ministry at 7 o'clock in the morning and is handed a new report before he has reached his desk. A military reconnaissance plane that flew over Hiroshima at dawn has returned with its pilot shaken, in a way that experienced reconnaissance pilots are not supposed to be shaken. The pilot's report, transcribed by a duty officer who clearly struggled to find appropriate language, reads as follows. The city of Hiroshima does not appear to exist in any recognizable form. From an altitude of 6,000 feet, the entire urban area appears to have been reduced to flat, smoking rubble. No structures of significant height are visible within a radius of approximately 3 miles from the center of the explosion. The Hiroshima Castle, which was used as a visible navigation landmark, is gone. The main railway station cannot be identified. The river bridges appear to have partially survived, but the areas around them are destroyed. A strong smell was noticeable even at altitude. The crew requests medical evaluation upon return. Anami reads this report twice. He sets it down. He picks up his pen and writes in the margin, in his precise military handwriting. Investigate possibility of concentrated fuel-air ordnance or new incendiary compound. Request assessment from Weapons Research Division. He does not write. Atomic bomb. The phrase does not appear anywhere in his notes that morning. Not because he is hiding from it, because it genuinely has not settled into his thinking as a real possibility. His Weapons Research Division has told him, clearly and repeatedly, that the Americans cannot have a functional atomic weapon yet. He trusts that assessment the way a navigator trusts a map that has always been accurate before. The map is wrong. But he does not know that. Not yet. At 11 o'clock in the morning on August 7th, President Harry Truman's statement reaches Japanese military monitors by shortwave radio. The duty officer transcribing it has to stop twice and reread the words to make sure he is translating them correctly. 16 hours ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima, an important Japanese army base. That bomb had more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe. The transcription is rushed upstairs within minutes. In the Supreme War Council meeting room, the 6 men who effectively control Japan's fate read those words in silence. Admiral Toyota reads it, sets it down, and picks up his tea. Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki reads it twice, his 78-year-old hands holding the paper with the careful grip of a man who is having trouble processing what his eyes are showing him. Foreign Minister Togo reads it and looks immediately at Anami. Anami reads it standing up, which is how he reads everything. He finishes, lowers the paper, and speaks with the measured authority of a man who has decided in advance that he will not be moved. This is psychological warfare, a fabrication designed to break civilian morale and pressure us toward surrender negotiations. Even if the Americans have developed some form of experimental atomic device, and our own research teams consider this highly unlikely at this stage, the claim that a single weapon destroyed an entire city is designed to terrify, not to inform. Toyota nods. If they genuinely possessed an arsenal of such weapons, they would have used them months ago. The fact that this is the first instance suggests either a single prototype or a propaganda exercise. Togo looks at both of them. With respect, he says quietly, our reconnaissance pilot this morning described a city that no longer exists. Whatever the weapon was, the result is not propaganda. The room is silent for a moment. Then Anami says, we are sending investigators. We will have accurate ground information within 48 hours. Until then, we do not allow American radio broadcasts to determine our strategic posture. The meeting continues. Other items on the agenda are discussed. The war goes on. But something has shifted in the room. Something subtle and irreversible, like the first hairline crack in a dam wall that will not be visible to the eye until the moment before the dam breaks. On the train, Nishina has stopped reviewing his notes. He is watching the landscape change outside the window. 2 hours from Hiroshima, he begins to notice the first signs. Trees with their leaves stripped off on one side, as if combed by an enormous hand, all pointing in the same direction, away from the southwest. Telephone poles leaning at angles that have no meteorological explanation. A farmhouse with its roof blown entirely off, tiles scattered across the fields around it like playing cards thrown in anger. Then the train slows. Then the train stops. The tracks ahead have been buckled upward from below, twisted into shapes that Nishina has only ever seen in theoretical blast effect diagrams. The driver announces that this is the end of the line. Nishina picks up his bag and his Geiger counter and gets off the train with a small group of military investigators who have been riding in the forward carriage. They look at the twisted tracks and then at each other, and nobody says anything. Nishina begins walking. The last 5 miles into Hiroshima take 2 hours. Not because of the distance, but because of what the ground becomes as he approaches the city center. First there is debris, broken tiles, shattered wood, fragments of furniture scattered across roads that are no longer clearly roads. Then there are walls standing without buildings behind them, like stage sets for a play about destruction. Then there are no walls. Then there is nothing that was a building at all. He turns on his Geiger counter at approximately 1 mile from the hypocenter. The needle moves immediately. Not the faint, baseline flutter of normal background radiation. It swings with the aggressive urgency of a machine detecting something it was built to detect. The clicking accelerates as he walks forward. It becomes rapid. Then it becomes a sound like a playing card held against bicycle spokes. Then it becomes nearly continuous. He is standing in an actively radioactive city. He already knew this would be true. He calculated it. He wrote papers about it. But there is a difference, an enormous, qualitative, unbridgeable difference between knowing something as an equation and standing inside it with a machine that is screaming at you. He keeps walking. What Nishina finds at the hypocenter will stay with him for the rest of his life. Buildings have not collapsed. Collapsed implies a process, a sequence, walls giving way and roofs falling in. What happened here was not a process. It was instantaneous conversion. Reinforced concrete structures within 200 meters of the detonation point have been compressed downward into flat pancakes of rubble, as if something enormous pressed on them from above. Steel beams have been bent into curves. A bicycle has been fused into a concrete wall at a depth of several inches, embedded the way a finger would be embedded in soft clay, except the concrete was not soft, and the bicycle was traveling at a speed no bicycle has ever traveled. He photographs everything. He records measurements. His hands are steady. The scientist part of him is functioning, but the scientist part of him is not alone in there. He rounds a section of broken wall and encounters the survivors. They are moving through the rubble with the specific, directionless wandering of people whose minds have been separated from their bodies by shock. Their burns are unlike any burns Nishina has seen in photographs or medical literature. The skin on their arms and faces and hands hangs loose, peeling away from the underlying tissue, some of them trailing long ribbons of skin as they walk without apparently feeling it. Their eyes, in many cases, are the most terrible thing, open, present, looking directly at him, but containing an expression that Nishina will later describe in his notes as the expression of someone who has already left. A woman sitting against a piece of rubble holds a bundle of cloth in her arms. Nishina stops. The bundle is a child. The child is not moving. The woman is rocking gently and not looking at anything. He stands there for a moment. Then he opens his notebook and writes nothing for 40 seconds. He holds the pen against the paper. He writes nothing. This is the moment when Yoshio Nishina one of the most brilliant physicists in the world, a man who trained under Niels Bohr in Copenhagen, a man who has spent 5 years calculating the theoretical properties of atomic weapons. This is the moment when his scientific framework simply runs out of space to process what he is experiencing. The equations do not cover this. The blast radius calculations do not cover this. The yield estimates and the thermal gradient models and the radiation dispersion charts do not cover any of what is in front of him right now. He closes the notebook. He helps the woman move to a cleared area where military medical teams are beginning to arrive. She does not speak to him. She does not look at him. She keeps rocking. He picks up his Geiger counter and keeps walking because that is the only thing he knows how to do. Back in Tokyo, at precisely 11:02 in the morning on August 9th, while Nishina is still compiling his findings and the Supreme War Council is still arguing about the nature of what happened in Hiroshima, an aide enters the conference room and places a message on the table in front of Admiral Toyota. Toyota reads it. The color leaves his face in a way that is visible to everyone in the room. He passes the paper to Anami without speaking. It reads, Nagasaki has been attacked with an atomic bomb. Casualty estimates unavailable. City communications severed. The room goes completely silent. 43 seconds of complete silence that everyone present will remember for the rest of their lives. Because in those 43 seconds, the entire strategic foundation of Japan's war plan, the plan that Anami had built with 2 million soldiers and 32 million militia members and thousands of suicide weapons, becomes meaningless. Because here is what the second bomb means, and everyone in that room understands it simultaneously. If the Americans have 2 atomic bombs, they have 3. If they have 3, they have 10. If they have 10, they do not need to land a single soldier on a single Japanese beach. They do not need to lose a single life to Anami's bayonets and kamikaze planes and suicide boats. They simply need to erase 1 Japanese city every 3 days until there are no Japanese cities left. The entire logic of Operation Ketsugo, bleed the Americans so badly they negotiate, requires the Americans to come to you. Atomic bombs mean they never have to come to you at all. The strategy does not bend under this new reality. It dissolves. Toyota's pen clatters onto the table. Nobody reaches to pick it up. Anami sits with the message in his hands for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is still controlled. Still the voice of a general in command of himself, if nothing else. We do not yet know their production capacity. He says, 2 bombs does not confirm an arsenal. But something in his eyes, for just a moment, is different from anything anyone in that room has seen in 4 years of catastrophic war. It is not fear exactly. It is the specific expression of a man who has just seen the walls of the room he has been living in his entire life and realized for the first time that they are not walls at all. On the road outside what used to be Hiroshima, Yoshio Nishina finishes his survey as the sun goes down. He has enough data. He has more than enough data. His measurements are unambiguous, his documentation is thorough, and his conclusion, which was never really in doubt from the moment he heard the first radio report 2 days ago, is confirmed with the complete, terrible finality of empirical evidence. He sits on a broken piece of concrete at the edge of the ruins and writes his report by the last of the daylight. His conclusion, which he will deliver to the War Ministry tomorrow, is 4 words long before the technical details begin. It was atomic fission. He looks up from the paper at the flat gray expanse of what was a city, stretching in every direction to the horizon. Somewhere in that expanse, in the rubble of a bridge over the Ota River, a woman's shadow is burned into the concrete. He does not know about that specific shadow, but he knows there are hundreds like it. He puts the report in his bag. He begins the long walk back to the train. There is a room beneath the Imperial Palace in Tokyo that almost no one in Japan knows exists. It was built in 1944 as a bomb shelter. Concrete walls 2 meters thick, no windows, a single wooden table, 14 chairs, and a portrait of Emperor Meiji on the wall. The air inside is stale and warm and carries the particular smell of a place that was built for emergencies and has spent most of its existence waiting for one. Just before midnight on August 9th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito descends into that room. He is 44 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall, and he walks with a slight stoop that makes him look smaller than he is. He is wearing his military uniform. His glasses catch the light from the single overhead bulb as he enters. The 14 men already seated at the table rise immediately and bow so deeply that several of them are looking at the floor when the emperor takes his seat. This specific moment, a Japanese emperor entering a room to personally break a government deadlock, has not happened in over 1,000 years of Japanese history. Everyone in that room understands this. The weight of it is physically present, like a change in air pressure. Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki, 78 years old and visibly exhausted, has requested the emperor's presence because the Supreme War Council has been deadlocked for 3 days. 3 votes for accepting surrender terms. 3 votes for continuing the war even against atomic annihilation. The normal machinery of Japanese government cannot break this tie. There is no procedure for it. The entire political structure of the country has seized like an engine without oil. So they have done the unthinkable. They have asked the living God to come downstairs and decide. Lieutenant Kenji Hatanaka is not in that room. He is standing in a corridor, 2 floors above it, in the dark, listening to the distant sound of footsteps below him. He does not know exactly what is being decided in that basement, but he knows enough. He has spent the last 48 hours in a state of escalating focused fury that he has been carefully disguising as calm. Since the news of Nagasaki reached Tokyo, Hatanaka has watched the men around him, senior officers, career soldiers, men who trained him and promoted him, begin to do something he cannot name without feeling physically ill. They are considering surrender. Not all of them, not openly, but he can see it in the way conversations stop when he enters a room. He can see it in the way certain officers look at each other when they think no one is watching. He can see it in the small administrative details, the way certain files are being moved, certain communications rerouted, certain procedural preparations being made that only make sense if someone at a high level is already thinking about what comes after the war ends. Hatanaka has a plan. It is, by any conventional assessment, an insane plan, but Hatanaka does not experience it as insane. He experiences it as the only logical response to an unacceptable situation. The emperor, he believes, is being manipulated by weak men who have lost their courage. The emperor does not truly want to surrender. The emperor is being failed by his advisors. If someone, a small group of loyal officers, could simply remove those advisors, could control the palace communications, could prevent the surrender announcement from being broadcast, then the army in the field would continue fighting, the Americans would face the invasion they are dreading, and Japan would find its honorable resolution. All it requires is the willingness to act. Hatanaka has never had a shortage of that. He stands in the dark corridor and listens to the footsteps below and thinks, not yet, but soon. In the basement room, the emperor speaks. His voice is soft. In the entire war, the Japanese public has never heard it. The emperor does not broadcast, does not give speeches, does not address the nation directly. To the men in this room, even to men who have served him for decades, the experience of hearing him speak in a small concrete room is profoundly disorienting. It is like hearing a religious text read aloud in a language you have only ever seen written. He says he has reviewed the situation carefully. He says he does not believe continued resistance will produce anything except the complete destruction of the Japanese people. He says that bearing what cannot be borne, enduring what cannot be endured, this is what the current moment requires. He does not raise his voice. He does not look at anyone directly. He speaks to the table, or perhaps to something beyond the table. And when he finishes speaking, the room remains silent for a very long time. General Anami sits with his hands flat on the table in front of him. Of all the men in this room, Anami is the one this moment costs the most. He has built his entire identity, his entire understanding of what a man is supposed to be, on the warrior code that is dying in this basement tonight. He is not a cynical man. He is not a man who followed that code because it was convenient. He believed it with the same totality that other men believe in gravity. It was simply the structure of reality. He looks at the emperor's face. And then he does something that takes more courage than any battlefield decision he has ever made. He bows his head. Not in defeat exactly, but in a kind of acceptance that is heavier than defeat, because defeat can be blamed on external circumstances. What Anami is accepting in this moment is that the world he believed in, the world where will and sacrifice and honor were sufficient weapons against any enemy, is gone. Not losing, gone. He bows his head, and the deadlock breaks, and Japan begins the process of ending the war. What happens next is not known to most people who know the history of World War II. On August 14th, Hirohito records his surrender announcement in a small room inside the palace. His voice, captured for the first time on magnetic recording tape, is thin and slightly formal. The voice of a man who has prepared his words carefully and is delivering them with the deliberate composure of someone who understands their permanence. The recording is placed in a metal safe. It will be broadcast to the Japanese nation at noon the following day. Hatanaka finds out about the recording within hours. He moves immediately. In the early hours of August 15th, well before dawn, Hatanaka and a small group of officers enter the Imperial Palace grounds in full uniform. They have forged authorization documents. They approach the commander of the Imperial Guards Division, General Takeshi Mori, and demand that he join their uprising and order his troops to seal the palace. General Mori refuses. Hatanaka shoots him dead in his office. He then takes Mori's official seal, stamps the forged orders with it, and begins distributing them to palace guards throughout the complex. For approximately 3 hours, Kenji Hatanaka controls the Imperial Palace. His men search room after room, corridor after corridor, looking for the recording. They do not find it. What Hatanaka does not know is that the palace chamberlains, the civilian staff who have served the emperor for decades, anticipated exactly this possibility. They have hidden the recording inside a pile of documents in a small room used for sorting palace correspondence. The guards searching the palace are looking for a metal safe. They are not checking document piles. The recording sits in a pile of papers while armed men walk past it in the dark. By 5 o'clock in the morning, the uprising is collapsing. Senior officers who Hatanaka expected to join him are not joining him. The broader military command, when word reaches them of what is happening, does not rise in support. They send officers to the palace to stop it. Hatanaka moves through the palace corridors with his pistol in his hand, trying to find anyone of sufficient rank who will help him, encountering instead the steady, quiet resistance of an institution that has already made its decision. At 6 o'clock in the morning, General Anami rises at his home. He has known about Hatanaka's plan. Not all of it, but enough. He made a decision several days ago that he would not stop it directly, because part of him understood what Hatanaka was feeling in a way that the rest of him could not endorse. But he also did not join it. He chose instead a different kind of ending. He puts on his full military uniform, his most decorated one. He writes a short note, and then he kneels on the floor of his home office. His note says only, "I have sinned greatly against the emperor." He performs the ritual of seppuku with the methodical composure of a man who has thought about this moment carefully and made his peace with it. He dies as the sun comes up over Tokyo, still in his uniform, still Korochika Anami, the last war minister of Imperial Japan. At noon on August 15, 1945, a voice comes out of radios across Japan. Most Japanese people have never heard it before. Millions of them bow toward their radios as it speaks. In the streets, in factories, on military bases across Asia and the Pacific, soldiers and civilians listen to a voice that is slightly formal and somewhat difficult to understand. The emperor uses archaic court Japanese that many ordinary people struggle to follow. And in the pauses between sentences, the only sound is the sound of people crying. On a military base outside Tokyo, Kenji Hatanaka has been walking since the palace coup collapsed at dawn. He has his pistol. He has written a short poem, a death poem in the classical tradition, on a piece of paper that he carries in his jacket. He walks through the streets of Tokyo as the emperor's voice comes out of windows and doorways around him. And he keeps walking, and he does not stop. He finds a public square near the palace. He kneels in the grass. He is 28 years old. He places the pistol against his own head and fires. The emperor's voice is still coming out of a radio somewhere nearby when he dies. 3 days later, Yoshio Nishina sits in his laboratory in Tokyo and reads the full American technical description of the Manhattan Project, released to the press by the War Department. 130,000 workers, facilities across 3 states, electrical consumption larger than entire nations, $2 billion, 3 years of total industrial secrecy. He reads the entire document without stopping. When he finishes, he sits for a long time, in the same way he sat on the broken concrete outside Hiroshima, still quiet, working through something that the scientific part of his mind is processing, and the human part of his mind is struggling to absorb. Then he picks up his pen and begins writing a letter to his former teacher, Niels Bohr, in Copenhagen. He writes, "We were right about the physics and completely wrong about everything else." He stares at that sentence for a moment. Then he keeps writing, because there is a great deal more to say, and the world outside his window is already becoming something none of them have any maps for. On the morning of August 15th, 1945, a 23-year-old infantry soldier named Corporal Hiroshi Tanaka is standing in a defensive trench on the coast of Kyushu, looking at the ocean. He has been standing in this trench, or one exactly like it, for 4 months. His orders have not changed in 4 months. Watch the horizon. When American ships appear, you will know what to do. He has a rifle, 40 rounds of ammunition, and a bamboo spear sharpened at both ends for close combat. The man in the trench to his left has a gasoline tank strapped to his back and a handheld igniter. The man to his right is 17 years old and has never fired his rifle at anything except a paper target. Hiroshi does not think about dying. He has already done that thinking and finished it. What remains after you have accepted death, really accepted it, not as a concept, but as a scheduled appointment, is a strange, flat calm that he has never been able to adequately explain to anyone. You stop being afraid. You stop hoping. You simply exist in each moment as it arrives, watching the horizon, waiting. The ocean this morning is absolutely still. No ships, no aircraft, just gray water, meeting gray sky at a line so flat and clean it looks drawn with a ruler. His radio operator, 20 feet behind the trench, calls out that there will be an important broadcast at noon. Hiroshi does not move from the trench. He has heard about important broadcasts before. In the ruins of what used to be a neighborhood in Hiroshima, a 12-year-old boy named Keiichi is looking for his mother. He has been looking for 9 days. He was outside the city when the bomb fell, visiting his grandmother in a village to the east. He walked back into Hiroshima on August 7th, the same day Nishina arrived, because he did not know what else to do. He has been sleeping in the shell of a building that still has 3 walls standing, eating whatever the military distribution teams hand out. And every morning he walks a different route through the rubble looking for something he recognizes. He is not crying. He stopped crying on the 3rd day. Not because the grief went away, but because the body has limits and his body has reached them. This morning he finds a shoe. It is his mother's shoe. He recognizes it by the small repair on the left heel. His mother resoled it herself last spring using leather cut from an old belt because there was no money for a cobbler and no cobbler available anyway. The stitching is uneven and distinctive. He picks it up and holds it. There is no other shoe nearby. There is no other anything nearby that he can connect to her. Just this one shoe in the gray rubble, sitting upright, as if placed there carefully, as if she set it down for a moment and stepped away. He puts it in his bag and keeps walking. At noon, voices begin coming out of the rubble around him, from radios that survivors have somehow kept working, powered by batteries, set on broken windowsills and pieces of flat concrete. A voice he has never heard before fills the ruined streets of Hiroshima. He stops walking. He does not understand all the words. The language is formal, old-fashioned, the kind of Japanese his teacher used to tell him existed in old books. But he understands enough. He sits down on a piece of broken concrete in the middle of what used to be a street, and he holds his mother's shoe against his chest. and he listens to the Emperor of Japan tell his nation to bear the unbearable. At the same moment, on the coast of Kyushu, Hiroshi Tanaka is standing at attention beside his trench. His entire unit has been called to attention. 200 soldiers standing in rows on the cliff above the sea, facing a radio mounted on a jeep, listening to a voice that none of them have ever heard. The commanding officer told them before the broadcast that they were to listen with respect and full attention. He did not tell them what the broadcast would contain. The Emperor's voice comes out of the radio's speaker with a slight crackle of static beneath it, thin and high and utterly unlike the voices of the generals and officers Hiroshi has been listening to for 3 years. It sounds, he will think later, like someone speaking from a very great distance, not geographically, some other kind of distance. When the Emperor says the word that means terminate, when the sentence resolves into its inevitable meaning, Hiroshi feels something move through the assembled soldiers like a physical wave. Not a sound, a shift in how 200 people are standing. A collective exhale that is not quite an exhale. The man with the gasoline tank on his back begins to cry. Not quietly. He cries with the full, open, uncontrolled grief of a child, standing at attention with 200 men watching, unable to stop, not trying to stop. Nobody looks at him. Nobody moves. Hiroshi stares at the ocean. He is thinking about a specific thing. He is thinking about the morning 3 years ago when he left his village on Shikoku Island to report for military induction. And his mother stood at the gate of their house and did not cry because she believed that crying was a bad omen. So she simply stood there, with her hands folded in front of her, and watched him walk away. And he did not look back, because he had also been told that looking back was a bad omen. And they both stood there, maintaining the forms required by a culture that treats composure as a form of love. He has not been home in 3 years. He lowers his rifle. He does not throw it down. He does not drop it. He bends at the knees and places it carefully on the ground in front of him, with the deliberateness of someone setting down something fragile. Then he straightens up and stands there with his empty hands at his sides, looking at the ocean. He is alive. The realization arrives, not as relief, but as something stranger, something he does not have a word for. He has spent 4 months being completely certain he would die on this beach. That certainty organized everything, every thought, every action, every morning. And now it is simply gone, removed without warning, and what is left in its place is a vast, disorienting openness that feels almost like falling. He is 23 years old, and he is going to be 24. He had stopped assuming that. In Tokyo, the city is quiet in a way that has no precedent. Not the quiet of a blackout, when silence is enforced and absence is felt as pressure. This is a different kind of quiet. The quiet of a collective held breath, of millions of people sitting with a reality that arrived too suddenly to be processed, and is being absorbed in the only way large truths can be absorbed. Slowly, privately, one person at a time. On street corners, people are sitting on the ground. Not injured, not waiting for anything, just sitting. Some of them are crying, some of them are not. A woman outside a post office is standing very still with her hands over her mouth, not moving for a very long time. In a government building near the palace, a mid-level bureaucrat named Taro Shinoda has been processing paperwork since 6 in the morning. When the broadcast ends, he puts down his pen sits back in his chair and stares at the ceiling. He is thinking about his son, who is somewhere in the Philippines and has not communicated in 5 months. He is thinking about whether the silence means his son is dead, or whether the silence simply means the communications have collapsed, which they have, everywhere, for months. He does not know. He has not known for 5 months. The difference now, the thing that the broadcast has changed, is that there is now a world in which his son might come home. There was not, as of this morning, a world in which that was possible. Now there is. He picks up his pen. He cannot do anything else right now except continue. Yoshio Nishina hears the broadcast in his laboratory. He is alone. His assistants left hours ago, sensing something in the morning air that made people want to be with their families. Nishina has no family nearby. He sits at his desk with the radio on the corner and listens to the Emperor's voice fill the room. When it ends, he turns the radio off. He sits in the silence for a while. Then he opens his notebook to a fresh page. Not the field notebook from Hiroshima, a different one, and begins writing something that is not a scientific document. It has no measurements, no data, no methodology. It is simply a record of what he saw in Hiroshima on August 7th and 8th, written in plain language, for no institutional purpose, addressed to no one specific. He writes about the twisted train tracks. He writes about the Geiger counter screaming. He writes about the buildings that were not collapsed but converted. He writes about the survivors moving through the rubble with their skin falling away. He writes about the woman with the child who did not move. He writes, "I spent 5 years calculating what an atomic weapon would do to a city. I was accurate in every technical respect. I was wrong about everything that the technical accuracy failed to measure. The yield figures were correct. The blast radius was correct. The radiation dispersal curve was correct. None of the figures told me what a human shadow burned into concrete actually looks like. None of them told me what it sounds like to walk through a city of 300,000 people when all 300,000 are gone." He stops. He looks at what he has written. Then he writes one more line. The question is not whether we understood the physics. The question is whether understanding the physics was ever the point. He closes the notebook. He does not know what to do with what he has written. He does not know if it will ever be read by anyone. He puts it in his desk drawer and goes to the window and looks out at Tokyo, still standing, still whole, its streets filling slowly with people who are trying to understand what they are now, what country they are living in, what their lives are going to be made of. On Kyushu, Hiroshi Tanaka is still standing above the ocean as the sun begins to go down. Most of his unit has dispersed. Officers came, gave quiet instructions, and men began moving back toward barracks in ones and twos, dazed and purposeless, the elaborate machinery of their military existence switching off in real time. The jeep with the radio has been driven away. The trench behind Hiroshi is empty. He is still standing there. The ocean is the same as it was this morning. Gray water, gray sky, the flat line of the horizon drawn clean and precise. No ships. There were never any ships. The invasion that was going to kill him never came. He stood in a trench for 4 months preparing to die for a coastline that no American soldier ever approached. And the war ended. Not on this beach, but in a basement, under a palace in Tokyo, in a room he will never see, decided by men he will never meet, with a weapon he has still never seen and cannot fully imagine. He bends down. He picks up his rifle from where he placed it on the ground this afternoon. He carries it back toward the barracks, not because he is still a soldier. He does not feel like a soldier anymore. He carries it because it is his, and he was raised to take care of the things that are his, and some habits survive the end of the world. He is going home to Shikoku. He does not know how long it will take. He does not know what he will find when he gets there. He does not know if his mother is still standing at that gate, or if the gate is still standing, or if anything he left behind 3 years ago has waited for him the way he has been waiting, without knowing he was waiting for this day. But he is going. In Hiroshima, a 12-year-old boy named Keiichi walks back to his 3-walled shelter as the light fades, his mother's shoe in his bag, the Emperor's voice still moving somewhere in his memory like a stone dropped in still water, the circles spreading outward long after the stone has disappeared. The war is over. The silence it leaves behind is enormous, and it belongs to all of them now. The generals who are gone, the scientists who saw too much, the soldiers who put down their rifles, and the children walking home through the ruins of a world that ended and, somehow, did not take them with it.